Linux Out Loud is firing up our mics, connecting those headphones as we search the community for themes to expound upon. We keep the banter friendly, the conversation somewhat on topic, and we have fun doing it. This week, we're spotting off about whether or not Linux users live inside a bubble a bit too much. I can answer that immediately. Yeah, of course we do. Let's get into episode 82. With me today, I have two of my very favorite people. Well, I have one of my very favorite people, and Matt. Wendy, how are you doing?
I am doing pretty good. Got a little more sleep last night than I did the night before, so we're going forward. Moving up.
Fantastic.
Oh, Nathan.
Yeah, well, you actually, Matt, really, truly, you are one of my favorite people. Like, I think about you often. No. Every time I step in some, like...
to troll.
Whenever I go out and to take care of my animals, and I'm wearing my muck boots, and I step in some, like, really nasty muck, immediately I think of you every time, Matt.
Oh, how sweet. Isn't that just so sweet?
I can't say what I want to.
It's okay.
Well, you can. I'll just put like the beep over you, and yeah, there you go. The magic of editing.
Nope, I'm going to be good, so you don't have to edit that part in the first of the show.
Well, I do appreciate that as well.
Despite the humor you'll get out of it having the sound clip for the editing.
Well, I
use
do
later.
Like to share those things with you guys afterwards. Yeah.
It's always fun. So, Matt, you have an update on your 1X player. What is this update?
So, last show I had shown that I had gotten the another company handheld gaming PC. I don't know what the heck you want to call it.
A Steam Deck-alike.
The Steam Deck-like.
Yeah.
It did not play nice with Windows. It did not play nice with Linux. A lot of that had to do with the joysticks. So I bought the Hall Effect joysticks to replace the ones that were in it. Mm-hmm. Couldn't get it configured right. Come to find out, the configuration is actually done on device, and it's not OS dependent. So once that was done, joysticks worked fantastic.
Nice.
Linux plays fantastic. So much better than Windows. It's almost like Chimera OS, which is what I'm using. And like that style of interface is almost designed for that device. Who would have thought that the experience? Who would have thought that type of experience is better than whatever Windows is on a sub 10-inch device?
Right. Yeah.
So
does that mean you didn't have to replace the joysticks?
I don't know. I probably didn't need to, but I now have spares either way, so I'm fine with that. And generically, the Hall effects generally don't suffer what most people call the joystick drift or stick drift, which is usually like a wet.
My kids are using game controllers for their robot, for the FTC robot. And the ones they have right now are Logitech, but they're mapped after I think it's PlayStation 3 controllers. I'd have to look again to see which ones are legal. But I think they're mapped after the PlayStation 3 controllers. And one of the downsides of the controllers that we have right now is people say that there's dead zones inside of the stick, so you can't really use them for adjusting speed with. You have to set a speed and then use them because the dead zones inside of those thumbsticks make it like nothing, way too much.
Yeah. So there's dead zone areas that it will peak up to. Essentially, there's really kind of an on-off when it comes to some of the analog movement stuff. When it comes to those style of joysticks, the Hall effects and the ones on the Steam Deck, I'm just using as an example, are very motion. I guess I'm trying to think of the right way to word that. They detect better movement. Their dead zones are shaped different. They can be changed more. you can go into like, if you're using like any type of Steam OS-ish device, you can go in and actually change out the dead zones and kind of calibrate how you want to do stuff and all that kind of jazz. But then again, you can do that with pretty much any controller I have connected to a SteamOS style device, or SteamOS itself has allowed me to configure all of that stuff. So you can
nice.
So I don't honestly know if the dead zone is something that can be tweaked in software. It might be able to.
For theirs, I don't know. I don't know that we can necessarily change those. I mean, we can get different ones, and I was actually looking at getting them some different controllers, but at the same time, I wasn't wanting to pay $60 a piece for the more higher end controllers. So,
oh no, definitely.
Especially because I'm not sure if their rookie team is going to be a team next year, or if they're all going to get absorbed into the existing FTC team, whether that's going to stay separate or whether they're going to just merge into one team next year. I mean, still, if they merge into one team next year, it's nice to have backups as far as your controllers go. But I was just wondering if, like, when you upgraded to these other thumbsticks, whether that was something that would be better because they're known for
they don't suffer
hardware.
the dead zone stuff, and generically what Hall Effects generically solves is what's known as stick drift. So like when you go into a game and all of a sudden, just as an example, if you're playing a first-person shooter and you go into the game and your character's just looking up at the sky, spinning around, your joystick is generically stuck in one direction or is moving in one direction. What the Hall effects are like magnetic movement detection is probably the best way to describe it, as opposed to the more traditional analog way of doing it with like the roll the ball and all that stuff. That's generically what they solve. So, but overall, I've been enjoying the One X player now. It currently is boxed up, but been taking that home every time I'm not at the recording studio and using that.
Nice.
Like my Steam Deck is sitting on my couch at the moment. So, well, before my Steam Deck was my console at home. So that's what I used. Whereas now I'm using I'll give One X player credit. It's a good device. It just ships with a crappy OS. Shock.
But you've solved that with Chimera OS.
Yes.
So I do have a question for you about this. So this is the One X player, not the One X Player 2. No,
this is I believe it's on their website. It's going to be the One X Player Mini Pro. So it's like it's the 7. If you go under their refurb, I believe on their website, it's I think $600, give or take. I don't exactly remember the overall total cost of it right now, because they have a few different models going on. This is my problem with some of the Chinese OEMs is they have kind of a shotgun effect of just throw stuff out there and have 75 different iterations of the same thing. Very cell phone manufacturer.
Right.
Yes.
So
some of their offerings look very compelling, like just I'm just saying, this is total side tangent because we can't keep on track. But the One X Player 2/2 Pro, it comes with
the one with
a keyboard,
detachable joysticks.
Well, that also on the keyboard as well. You can have a detachable keyboard to it. So, like to my mind, I think like, wow, they're actually doing a very interesting thing there, hardware wise.
Right.
I mean, so I don't think they actually have it. I wouldn't spend the $1,500 that those are probably costing, if I remember correctly. The cost those get really, really expensive for the better end models.
Yeah. I was noticing that they really jump, which is probably why you went with the version that you did, was because price wise too.
Stupid deal on it, because that the version I got goes for $599, $699. So I don't remember exactly what the cost, like official MSRP directly from them is, but I got it for $200.
And that's really good.
1/3.
That's a good price.
So right now, the One X Player Mini Pro with 16 gigs and 512 gigabytes of RAM is listed for $600, which is marked off from $1,200 US.
Mm-hmm. And the version I got is the all white version, which costs more. This one has 32 gigs of RAM and a terabyte of storage. So
oh, heck yeah. That's a killer deal.
For $200 plus the 50 for the Hall effects, whatever, I'll own it. I'm okay with that. So, I will say that on the software experience side on Windows is god awful. You can tell it's third-party stuff tacked on to the OS, kind of like how most of Windows stuff works in general. It doesn't have that, and Nate, because you're a Steam OS person, you'll understand it a little more, is that just that integration of tools into the OS and feeling natural with the OS. Where it doesn't feel like it's just a kind of third-party tack on. And that's what a lot of these Windows-based ones feel like. It's more tacked on stuff on top of the OS. It doesn't have a catered experience. It is very much we're going to cram the square peg through the round hole with a triangle with a hammer kind of approach. And it makes for a really bad Fuji build, honestly. That's my opinion, but overall, I think it's been a good experience. I got about, I think 100 or so games installed on that thing right now. So like various size games and whatnot, but yeah. So other than that, but I'm not the only one giving updates and changing things. Wendy, it seems to be you're changing phone service providers.
Yes, I did that recently. So we'd been with a prepaid service for a while, and we've been using Starlink internet now since end of October. Yeah, I think end of October, beginning of November is when we got it set up, somewhere along those lines. And I've really been enjoying it so far. We've had several upgrades, and so my internet has gotten better. Definitely, I've noticed that my upload speeds have gotten better, a little bit more stable. So yay on that end. And I heard about the partnership that T-Mobile is doing with Starlink. Now, they've finally gotten some satellites launched, and it's not fully rolled out yet. They've had some different issues with regulations and all of that stuff, and other companies saying, hey, you're not allowed to do that, and just, the legal battle stuff that's been going on. There's other places out there that are way better at informing on what's going on with that, but they did finally get some satellites launched for that service. They're going to start with text messages, and then it's going to roll over to phone calls. And that is a service that we are definitely looking forward to. Now, when we're in the mountains, I'm not as excited about that when we're up in the mountains with the family, because one of the things that I enjoy about that is like devices don't work, right? You can't access your social media from there. But on the upside of having that connected satellite service eventually on our phones is my husband does a lot of traveling for work. And there are times, especially over courses or areas of Nevada, which I've talked about before, that he has no internet service at all, no phone service, no texting, no nothing. So we pay $20 a month for a separate device that connects to his phone and then connects to satellites so he can send an X number of messages out for that. He can't make phone calls with it, but he can make text messages. So, and they can send an SOS. And if you send an SOS, not only does it alert people on your SOS list, but also the closest emergency services. So if he's up in the mountains by himself or he's traveling and something happens, he does have a connection, especially with the service pickup. If it goes down, he needs to be able to get a hold of somebody inside of that dead zone. So we're paying extra for that service right now. And we're looking forward to eventually having that connection on our phones. From what I understand of the service, you won't need a special phone. You won't need like a dedicated satellite phone. You will be able to use just your regular phone. So right now, I've got a OnePlus 9. This one, I'm actually looking at replacing it at the moment because it's been just over 3 years since we got this one. And I'm noticing that my battery is not lasting very long anymore. Like, I'll wake up in the morning with it dead or like close to dead because I don't have a charger right next to me. I don't leave it on the charger all night. So yeah, I'm definitely having issues with battery, and Magneto's been having some serious issues with his phone. Granted, it lasting 3 years for him is like a major plus. So we don't have to be worried about buying specific satellite phones because it's supposed to work.
Sounds like a miracle it lasted that long, but that's just my
it is
opinion on that. And I not to be Not to be like rude or mean, but I mean, I realize it is, but it does seem like a miracle.
No, it's not rude. It's not mean. Actually, when I mentioned to him the other day that it had been that long, and I didn't realize it had been that long. I knew it had been at least a couple years, but I'd mentioned to a friend that I was looking at some different phones and looking at some mainly for Magneto. But when I was looking at some different phones, and he's like, "Didn't you just get those?" So I went and looked up on my Best Buy account because I'd bought them from Best Buy on Black Friday. Not that they were on sale. That's just when we'd finally decided what we wanted, and I finally bought them. And it was no longer on my list of things. Like, you can show 3 years worth of purchases on your Best Buy, and it was no longer on there. So it was this previous November. It's been just over 3 years, and I was like, holy crap. And when I mentioned that to Magneto, he's like, really? Okay, I'm more impressed with it, because I didn't realize it had been that long either. And normally his phones last no more than 2 years because he is so hard on them, the dirt in the environment, the grease in the environments that he works in, and just the fact that like Magneto is hard on hardware, period. Like, we're both kind of amazed. We're all amazed that his phone lasted that long. But it's time to get a new one. And with the way the service works, it's nice knowing that we can just pick whatever phone is going to work best for him instead of having to have a special satellite phone.
Yeah. No, that's definitely cool. How's the overall, just kind of, again, side tangent. Overall, have you been pleased with the service from Starlink as a whole?
Yeah, I've definitely been really pleased with them, but I can really only compare it to what I had before, what I had with my local service provider. And without a doubt, I was hoping for some faster upload speeds based on what the internet was showing. But like I told you guys, when we first got it, they had some satellites go down due to some solar flares and some falling out of orbit a little bit faster than they were supposed to. And I think they've pretty much replaced those. So when doing uploads, I've went from an average about 5 megabits per second up to I'm noticing closer to 9, 10 megabits per second up, and sometimes seeing over 20, just kind of depending on which satellite I'm connected to at the time and how close it is to us at the moment. But I've definitely seen an uptick in my overall speeds and definitely more stable upload speeds. And for me, as someone who uploads really large files on a regular basis, that's what I care about. Like, I really don't notice download. Download's fine. It doesn't affect us at all. What I care about is the upload speeds and how fast can I get something up and done and out of my hair, right?
For
I'm
sure.
assuming not only you, but when you edit for other people, they also appreciate that because that means they get the files quicker.
Right. They get the files quicker. They're not waiting on them. It's not like, hey, I started this upload in 6 hours. You can have it. And when I was with my old ISP, that's definitely how it was. And I was talking to them and they're like, oh, yeah, your file's so big that it was dropping me down to like less than 1 to 1 megabit per second. And I'm like, the file that I'm uploading is 6 gigs. That is going to take forever. It's going to take forever. I have a life. I don't want to babysit my computer and wait for things to upload. I want to go do things. I'm busy.
You may as well just like drive it to Michael's house at that point.
Exactly. Yeah, it would be so much faster. Just be like, hey, I'm jumping on an airplane with a USB stick. I'll see ya.
I was going to say,
you can get it in the mail.
Probably be quicker to get the, just mail the, snail mail.
Just mail a USB stick. Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely been better. I've been happy with it. Like I said before, if you have access to fiber or other high-speed internet in your location, it may not be the best for you because you are dealing with variable rates. It does go up and down depending on the time of day and the overall traffic, and it goes up and down depending on which satellite you're connected to. So there are different maps that you can watch, so I can look at the maps and see which satellites I'm kind of connecting to at a time. Is it switching different? And then I can look as like something's uploading from my phone and see as we go from a satellite that has just passed over my house to now it's too far away and it's connecting to another one at a distance and seeing like those speeds bounce. So it's not super smooth. There is some variability there. But I do know that one of the latest things that was talked about is they want to make Starlink good for first-person shooter gaming. To have that speed, to have that lack of latency in between things. So 2 thumbs up for me. I'm not playing those games, but it makes my work life easier.
So for those that non-gamer speak, 200 milliseconds or under is generally considered good. So as far as FPS reaction speeds, for those that don't understand that means from the time I press a button or a movement on the controller, how it translates from that to the server and back to me. Generically, 200 or less is considered good. Most people want even lower, but realistically, given the internet infrastructure of the US, so like realistically, like.
So right now my latency is
How
saying
fast can you
27
really fart,
milliseconds. I don't play that game, but it's popular.
Matt probably plays Fortnite a lot.
I just don't see that being one of his games.
No.
Not so much, yeah.
No, Fortnite. If I played Fortnite, that would require me to support Epic. And do you think I have bought a single game off the Epic Game Store? Anything that is part of my Epic Games library has been stuff they give away. So I'm just taking money from them at this point. So I don't care.
I got you.
Yeah, I totally get that. I definitely do. And Nate, you have joined the new monitor crew with your new one monitor, but this one isn't for home. This one's for work. I thought you had 6 at work. So now you're up to 7?
No. So I have, for my home office, when I work from home, I have a 6 monitor setup. And I still have to Cubicle Nate article that and releases information on that. But that aside, I have, so at work, I have 3 monitors in front of me previously, and they were all hooked up to a Windows system. And I found that I was using the Linux a lot more than Windows. So I had like 1 monitor for Linux and then the other 2 for Windows. And then one of the monitors, actually, since I got there, has already been going bad. And I have to occasionally like flick the bezel on it to get the vertical lines to disappear. And so I said, and I don't like asking for things, I like to make do with various bits of technology until I drive them completely into the ground. That's just kind of how I play. And so I didn't want to ask for a new monitor, but like doing certain spreadsheets and a lot of the documentation I do, it was actually getting really aggravating. So I said, can I get a new monitor? I'm like, well, sure. I says, well, can I get a new monitor that's perhaps a little more expensive? It's actually like 2 monitors in one, plus a USB-C hub. And they're like, sure. And so it was around $500 some odd for the monitor. It's a dual up. This is an LG dual up monitor. I've talked about this before, and actually I wrote an article on cubiclenate.com about it, about like how fascinating I think it is. And so the way I have it set up now is pretty much I just take my Framework laptop. I got a little stand I printed off, which I'll share that with you too. It's actually kind of nice that when you set it in there, it kind of closes in and holds it in place. So not completely, but pretty good. It's a neat design. And so I basically just dock the Framework. I got it's a keyboard and mouse there, and I do whatever it is I need to do. And then I just have the 1 monitor hooked up to the Framework at work. And at home, I have it hooked up to 6 monitors. So they're very different setups. But anyway, it's very nice because I have the larger, it's like 2 1440p monitors joined together on top of each other, wide aspect ratio. So it's like 2 monitors I'm looking at right now stacked up on top of each other as far as in pixels. So it's not obviously this as big as what I have in front of me. But it's great because I can have like on the top is like my main work area, and then bottom, like the lower 2 quadrants, I have like my email and my, Microsoft Teams. I know, Matt, go ahead and fill in whatever you're going to say. Okay, nothing. That's fine. But we're a Microsoft organization, and so that's what we use to communicate. That's what we use for the higher level co-op that we're a part of. That's Teams is everything. So I guess I'm a Microsoft sysadmin now or something like that. I don't know. Not a very good one, but anyway, that's how I've been operating. But I try hard. Although Yoda would tell me do or do not, there is no try. But I do put a lot of effort into making sure that it's the best experience possible. Anyway, that has nothing to do with the monitor. So I have 4 workspaces, and then I have certain things will stay like I'll keep like the Teams up on multiple workspaces, because the way Plasma works is really awesome. You can actually select which desktops you actually want it to be on, which virtual desktops, which is really cool. So like so like right now it's virtual desktops 2 and 4 is where I keep it, and then 1 and 3 reserved for other things. But it's really nice. Got a big workspace to do whatever it is I got to do. I love it, and it really makes working on whatever various things way better. I'm getting a little used to it still. Trying to get the right tilt, because it's a sit stand desk. So when I stand, I have it tilted one way. When I sit, I have it tilted another way. But outside of that's like the only issue is I have to tilt it between sitting and standing. So I don't think that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's not too bad. So it's just sitting on the table, or do you have it mounted on an arm?
It's mounted on an arm. So it's like a 3-arm setup that was there before. So the one monitor that was failing, I took that one off and then did some monitor swaps around, and then put that one on one of the arms. And then the Linux, the framework just sits below another monitor. And then I have, a couple of keyboards there. So nice. I really like it. I would say so far. Now, mind you, I don't have a whole lot of hours logged on it yet, but so far I really like the monitor. I think it's pretty great. There might be some better options out there. I just actually, after I bought this one, I saw there's a competitor, but it's like an off-brand, so I'm a little bit leery about no name brand monitor. So I didn't. I might buy it for home, but I wouldn't ask work to buy it for me. So anyway, it's pretty cool. Like the color for me. I mean, I'm not a graphic designer. I don't do photo editing that requires like the perfect whatever. I don't even know the term.
You don't have to worry about color calibration or any of that fun stuff. Yeah,
not at all. So if black is black and white is white,
it's pretty gosh dang good. I just pulled it up. So the dual up monitor, and is this the one with USB-C? Mm-hmm.
So I literally just plug that USB-C right into my computer. It charges it, and there's everything down the Thunderbolt.
Yeah,
which
so
is
this
super
one
cool.
Actually has a really wide color gamut on it. It's one that if somebody did want to use it for color work, they could.
I think it'd be. I haven't done any video editing on it because when I'm at work, I'm not doing video editing because I'm working. But I would be interested. Like I might at some point in time just see what it's like to open Kden Live on a desktop just to see how sweet that would be or not. But I think that would be pretty great actually, because there's a lot of real estate there to do video editing.
So each screen, I can see kind of how it's looking right now. So each screen is technically like 28 inches, or it's 28 inches overall on the diagonal.
It's 28 inches overall. Yep. So it's not terribly big. It's it's not a huge screen, but it's it's a lot of pixels.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And I'm running it, of course, with Wayland, and there's no screen tearing. It's actually it's very responsive. It doesn't have any with X you would have weirdness, with pushing that many pixels, but this is nothing. It's great. It's truly a fantastic experience. Yeah. Anyway, it's been fun. It's been practical. It's made one of the problems for me anyway. It's like I would be at work and I have a project. I'm like, you know what? This will be easier when I get home this evening. I'll finish it up at night. When I get home from work. And I kind of wanted to stop saying that, because it's like I should be more productive at work than at home. So this made it a little bit closer. I still have a better setup at home, but I don't have an office big enough. I got way more space here in Cubicle Labs than I do, for a lot of projects
at work.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of things that require any sort of like tinkering or like tearing stuff apart, I bring it home to work on, because it's just they're not going to they don't have the space to give me a lab, and they have zero inclination to give me a lab, because if that floor space isn't making money, they're not going to want to give it up. So
right. Yeah. And you've got all your tools at home anyway. I mean, you've got everything you need to take it apart and put it back together. So that does make it easier as far as that goes. It sucks to get into a project and be like, I don't have the screwdriver for that.
Well, I could go to maintenance and get just about anything I need there, but it's just irritating.
Easier. Right.
And I could probably use their space for some projects, but it's just some things, like if I'm going to let it run for an extended period of time, it's just way easier to do it here than it is to do it there. So if I do some run some tests or whatnot. But anyway, so that's it. Not much more to say besides that. So far, the LG Dual Up monitor, which I first heard on the Linux Matters podcast from Popey and Wimpy and Mark. So that's actually where I first heard it and looked into it. Was very interested, and now I have it. So I blame Popey. Actually, it's Mark that got it. Fault. So yeah, listen to podcasts bad for your health. Or your actually, no, it didn't affect my pocketbook. What am I saying?
It's not bad for your health. It's great for your health. You should listen to more podcasts. Listen to this podcast.
Over and over again.
There you go.
Share with your friends. Leave a like. Like and subscribe.
And subscribe.
Beep. Yeah. Is that a
there
thing?
We go. Now we filled that. Whatever. I can't remember what I was going to say. Yeah.
Requirement.
And that's just a podcast.
It's not something that we normally say here, right? I mean, that's not something that we're not like, hey, like and subscribe. They do on like every single YouTube video there is out there. They've got that push. And that's something that we've never done till just now.
It's true.
So I don't know whether I'm like, we've crossed that barrier or like, do I feel dirty? Because we just say.
No, you feel dirty.
Like and subscribe.
On many Cubicle Night videos, I will say, if you like this video, I said, and if you really dislike this video, hit that dislike button twice and really, really make it stick.
I love it.
I've had comments on that actually. So I guess the question that we want to unravel here is, do Linux users live inside some kind of a bubble a bit too much and don't really see Linux for what it truly is because we're just so deep inside of it we can't see the forest from the trees or whatever?
Well, and I don't know that. I guess it depends, because you do have the people that will say how bad Windows or Mac is and then pretend like there's nothing wrong with Linux at all, which there's give and takes to every operating system, right? There's some positives here, there's some positives over there, there's negative on both ends, and where do you balance that out? Where does it have the best workflow, the best entertainment, like everything for you? But I know Matt brought up this topic with a new Linux user video that he found, and I think you did a reaction to that one, and I haven't sat down to watch it yet because I haven't had time to have my earbuds in, because that's one you don't want to have kids around for.
Yeah, so what I personally mean by like, do we live in a bubble, specifically as it relates to likes, is how we talk to new users. Or people potentially interested in coming over from the other areas. Because when we say, oh, go sudo apt get update, install, whatever, it'll be like insert command here, they are going to be like, huh, what? Because the platforms they're coming from generically, because I'm doing lowest common denominator. I'm talking about the crowd that might have a passing interest in technology, but doesn't, there's a crowd, and it's usually like, it's this weird cross section of like people who are into hardware and gaming and just technology in general. So there's just kind of an area where Linux usually falls into, and they hear it in passing. So, but you tell them to go sudo apt install whatever, or whatever archaic terms Arch is using currently, or the old Flatpak commands that used to be the way to install Flatpaks before thing. It's just such an archaic way, but we're speaking to the audience or the wall, however you want to look at it, and back into the chamber of how this is the way for new users. And it's like, it's so contradictory, because we're like, oh, we want new people. So they're not all, what I'm turning into a gray beard at this point. We want to bring those people in so that we have future developers, that we have people that are like the ecosystem itself grows. Like, you have new ideas for hardware and software and how to utilize that, and like just overall. And I think we do ourselves kind of a disservice sometimes where like, we don't understand people outside the bubble. and like how they approach technology and computing in general, because we're a niche of a niche and like the 1% of like the 0.2% or 2% of whatever at this point when it comes to technology. So not everyone's going to be a hobbyist. Not everyone's going to have an interest in technology. Not everyone's going to care. They're going to kind of like what, as it relates to the Steam Deck. Most people that buy the Steam Deck might be tinkerers, but most of them I've found, especially even like reviewers who are technically inclined, they view it as an appliance. And that's 99% of computer users. It's a tool. They want it to do a job. We have to be better about talking to that crowd so we can expand the audience and the ecosystem.
So I've thought about this quite a bit. And now that I'm with the job change that I've had, I deal with, that's not the right word. I interact with many users. There's about 100 or so user machines that I'm concerned about the usage of them. And for the most part, I kind of think that like nobody really cares about their computers. There's basically like two, three, four people that actually like are enthusiastic about technology there. Most people, a laptop is an appliance. And which, by the way, I'm amazed by the number of times that Windows has such a hard time like just doing simple things like applications continually just running like they're supposed to. It could be the application. It might not be a Windows problem. I don't know.
Might be a bit of both.
Might be a bit of both. But I wouldn't necessarily want to put them on Linux though either, because I think that'd be a whole new set of problems. You know, I wouldn't want to force it on somebody. So I think for somebody who wants, I think the key here is recognizing that people know how to use Windows because of a certain paradigm. They're comfortable with it. This is how it just works. Now, a lot of people who I work with, they don't install anything on their computer anyway. So whether it's a Windows or Linux machine, they probably wouldn't know the difference or wouldn't care. But whenever I write articles like on cubiclenate.com, I write it for as if I were speaking to me, and I consider myself basically not an expert in Linux at all. I kind of like it more like a seasoned novice, maybe at best, because like I'm gonna give you an example. I wanted to do the command line of how to add my username, give him specific permissions. And I'm like, yeah, I don't use it often enough to remember. I know how to do it in Yash. It's very easy to go into user settings and whatever and just add it. But I'm like, I had to look it up. One of my articles, actually it's a wiki that I did for OpenSUSE. So that's how I looked it up because I knew where it was with the Arduino IDE. But anyway, and so it's like, I try and write things step by step, like what are all the steps that I have to take to do a thing. And that's how I like to write an article, because it's I do live in my tech bubble, but I also recognize, you know, I'm in that tech bubble, and how am I going to explain it to somebody outside of that bubble step by step? What are the steps you have to take? So I do command line stuff in my step by step, but I also recognize that I'm talking to somebody who's enthusiastic about learning about the technology, not somebody who's just trying to they just want to play games and move on with their life. So it's a slightly different crowd, I think. And so
go ahead, Nate.
Anyway, so I don't want to, I would be like, there are different kinds of new users to Linux. And I think that bubble becomes more like, you know, like when you blow bubbles, you know, like kids blow bubbles, you know, and like some they stick together and then they land and they have like a bunch of different little, so I think we can be within different bubbles of the bubble mess, essentially. And so
we
have to recognize.
Mean, if you go like with a Venn diagram kind of analogy, you can be inside of two different circles. You can be in that area in the middle. And I definitely get where you're saying. You could be a new user that wants to learn stuff from the command line, and I get that. And I think it's one thing that Destination Linux does really, really well is they're speaking to both sides. So on this latest episode of DL, I think it's 356, they're doing some different talks about snap packages, and they go through some of the history of those things, and they kind of walk the people through it. So if you are new and you haven't been exposed to some of those things yet, then it kind of gives you a background on it. And if you're an existing user, you can always fast forward a little bit. I mean, it's not like they're talking to you in a way that makes you sound or feel stupid. They're just kind of laying that information out there. So if you want to use those things, then you can. And if you don't want to, you don't. So in the terms of hey, you're a new user to Linux and you're just throwing out the one way of doing it in the terminal. Like I said, I enjoy updating in the terminal, and I have since I have been on Linux, but it's one of those cases where it'd be nice to say you have two options, and especially where this is a video, demonstrate this is how you update from the GUI and this is how you update from the terminal. Pick which one you like the best.
No, I definitely agree. Like, I'm not saying that we should. My thing is like, if there's, it's kind of like when distros say, oh, we cater to new users. It's like, okay, most new users. I'm talking like, this is why I say I'm generalizing most new users. And like Nate said, there's like, Nate, out of 100 people, will say maybe 4% care about tech, give or take, in general.
That might be a little high, actually. You might be.
I'm being generous.
Yeah.
So say 4 or 5% care. If you're talking to the other, we can't always just talk to the 4%. You have to talk to the 95% to see if they might even have a passing interest in it.
Right.
And you do that by showing them that there are alternatives, or however you want to word that, but you have to give them equivalencies of what they're used to in the same note. So like, if someone's going to create a video and say, this is for new users, are you talking to people who are in the Venn diagram of like technology enthusiasts and hobbyists and that stuff? Or are you trying to talk to the other 95% of the world?
Right. Well,
that's where I'm coming from.
Yes. And I'm one of those people who need to see it in order to understand exactly what's going on, plus like going through and doing it myself. So the best learning experiences for me is when I've got a video that's walking me through it step by step, and then at the same time I can do it at the same time. So it's kind of been a nightmare for me as we've been learning Java, and not that there isn't a lot of stuff out there for Java. It's just harder to find stuff that is relevant to FTC. So as we're going through it, and I'm trying to help my daughter learn it, so in the process I'm learning it myself, I'm struggling to find ways that work. And the one kid that's on the other FTC team, he's pretty knowledgeable in Java, but the frustrating part is it's like, oh, just do this. And I'm like, I understand on a certain level because I've worked with MicroPython, but at the same time, structure of things are a little different and file structure is a little different. So can I see what that line of code looked like? Where does it fall in the line of things inside of that code document? Like, that's the stuff I physically want to see it, because if I've got, say, a piece of code, say it's for a teleop program, so that's where you have the controls entered, what buttons on the controllers do what. If I can physically see that, then I can read my way through it and work my way backwards to this is how you got there. So that's how I learn. That's how I want to see it. Give me something physical to look at. Now, every new user is going to be different, but providing those options, as like Nate does with having, sometimes you've got some videos up on them too at the same time, or little podcasts, I can't remember what you call them. But being able to walk you through it that way, the text version who want to read it, but it's just keeping in mind that as you're going through those different things, what is your audience? Are you speaking to someone who is installing Linux for the first time and they're really, really overwhelmed with all the different options that you have there, and then you're throwing like one more terminal command at them and they're like, never mind. I've just stressed myself out of going any further. Or, you know, what does that look like? And I'm now at the point where I'm rambling, but I get what you're saying. Yes, think about your audience. You're targeting to new users. So give that example of the terminal, but also at the same time, let's be honest, not every new user who's walking into this is going to jump wholeheartedly into Linux from scratch.
Right. Yeah. I think it's like, when they say target a new user, I think that's please don't throw me off the boat, but I think it's a silly premise. So here's what I think. If anything, you want to target makers. So somebody who's interested in making something, you know, whether it's CAD or or circuit design or whatever, building robots, that kind of maker. And that's all, again, splits into other groups too. Show the power of Linux or why this form of computing is better for this function and make it easy to make the transition of understanding how to do that. Or another area I would say is like graphic designers. So someone, let's say, who has a Cricut, what's it called?
Cricut.
Yes.
Which Cricut isn't great for Linux. Getting all of that jargon working isn't great. But if you want something like that, get the Cameo Silhouette where you can have the Inkscape plugin and not have to touch proprietary software. There you go.
We need to talk about this. Okay. Anyway. Okay. Not now. Future show or something. Or offline, they'll bring it back.
We can do a future
perfect.
Show. Yep. That's a topic. So target, okay, so I was in a... talking in an OpenSUSE group, this is a while ago on the OpenSUSE bar, is saying we need to target more women. And I'm like, why don't you target their interests?
Yes. Yes.
So it's like it's a weird thing to say, oh, we need to have more women. Like, just target their interests. Well, then how do you cater towards someone who has, like, what do women care about? Now you're kind of a weird exception, no offense, Wendy.
Yeah.
Because you're into robotics.
I'm a weirdo, it's cool.
You're into robotics and beating things up.
I'm the minority. When it comes to the majority of women, I am definitely in the minority being part of code and robotics and some of the other stuff that I'm in. Yeah, definitely.
And cool. But so generally speaking, if you're targeting robotics, you're not targeting women. But if you're targeting, let's say like clothing design, embroidery, stuff like that, there are some men in that, but it's a primarily, women care more about fashion than, I could care less about fashion. Do the jeans fit? And does a shirt not make me look like I'm swimming in the side of it or like I'm, wearing a medium? So finding the right balance, that's all I care about, right. But as far as like appearance wise, it's really more of a, generally speaking,
do I look passable for work? Yeah.
Can I go to work and not be given the eye, Don't show up in like gym clothes. So, I might show up in Vibrant Five Fingers every once in a while, but that's only the same.
Oh.
So nobody cares. Anyway, the idea there is, are you targeting the interests? So, I'd say that new user, maybe they got a sewing machine that can do, embroidery of some kind, and they want to be able to create designs with Inkscape or something like that and be able to export those over to the sewing machine. That would be an area to target. No idea if it's even possible. I'm sure there's something out there for it, but creating an easy way to make that transition would be one way to go, because Linux tends to support older or more obscure hardware like that for a longer period of time than the proprietary counterparts. So that would be a way to go. And that's just kind of how I look at it. So new user in what space? What are you trying to accomplish with the computer? That's what you need to target. Target the objective, not the Linux. That Linux is the right tool for this objective.
And I really like that. And as far as like editing goes, yes, it's been kind of a pain to get DaVinci up and running. I've got it running on Ubuntu Studio right now. And for the most part, it's running pretty gosh dang smooth, which is awesome. And when I've had to edit using DaVinci on Windows, I have noticed that I've had issues with the system crashing because I'm running out of RAM. I've got 32 gigs of RAM, and I already know that I need to replace that RAM. But because of the heaviness of that operating system in general, and I have a very large render going out, DaVinci crashes and it doesn't finish. And so I've had to go through and like close background stuff and other things that it's opening and processing in the background in order to make that work. So it's nice to be able to say, you have an operating system here that allows you to get this creative work done more efficiently using less system resources or better use of your system resources without specific crashes like that. It's my issue with Cricut has definitely been I absolutely loathe their software, and I hate the fact that I can't do a forced firmware upgrade on them. So I've been really considering selling mine and getting that. And it was after I bought my Cricut that I realized, hey, for some of these other ones out there, you can use their proprietary software, or some have that you can just plug into something like Inkscape and export it from there. How well does that work? I don't know. I haven't actually played with it yet, but I know that it is an option that's available. So you want to do all of these graphic things, these fun, creative, crafty things. Here is how you achieve that on Linux. That's a wonderful approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and this is what I mean. Like, talk to the audience. Like, and that's what we don't do, unfortunately. We talk to the Linux audience. Cool, like that's awesome.
Yeah.
But like, we're not targeting to an audience at all. It's either the vague new user, which the way I'm viewing it is very generalized to like, computer is tool. That's what I use it for. Don't care. Like Nate, you were saying, look at the makers or creators or however you want to specifically word that. Like target the industry, target the group as a whole, and then you can splinter off from there. But like figure out, like, if you're going to talk to makers, they're going to be more DIY and that kind of stuff, and they're going to be more willing to do that stuff. But if you're going to be like, hey, I'm a content creator, I'll put it that way, and I'm going to talk about these things are great for brand new Linux users. Well, if that's the audience you're talking about, they're going to be used to this way of coming over, and like the transition phase needs to be smoother, which, like, again, audience, talk to the audience, not the wall, and into the bubble. And unfortunately, sometimes it just feels like we talk to the bubble a little too much. That's just where I feel like we do.
See, I think largely because I think like what is it that excites you about Linux in general? And when I say Linux, I mean I say it fast and loose when I say Linux, because I mean Linux and all the various tools that allow us to do the things we do. It's for an ideological reason more than anything else. It's that software freedom, the ability to take ownership of my computer, and so I am more than happy to take on the burden of whatever it is to be a sysadmin for those machines in the least painful way possible, of course, which is why I use OpenSUSE and Tumbleweed, and
which is always painful.
Yeah, so that being said, what excites me is the ability to get whatever not necessarily. It's how the operating system enables me to get my work done in the most efficient way and to make it enjoyable, because you can buy a Dodge, well, maybe not anymore, but you can buy a Dodge Omni or a Ford Escort, and that'll get you back and forth to work, not comfortably, and you won't enjoy. I mean, it's just not going to be an enjoyable ride. Or you can have a nicer ride, and if you don't care about cars, you will appreciate the nicer ride. And so there is an equivalency, I think, with Linux and open source software. If the ride can be good, great. If the ride is really bumpy and kind of ropey, like trying to run TurboTax on Wine, nope, just going to use the online version instead. Anyway,
right.
Things like that. If it's a really ropey experience, it's not going to be enjoyable anyway. But I think with the advent of the browser age, a lot of things don't really matter in that regard. So I don't know. I just think you have to. I think I enjoy the ride. I enjoy the philosophy. I enjoy being able to control my system. Being able to. That's why I get excited about Linux. That's it. It's saying that I can do this thing because I've been empowered to do so, not that someone else is going to do it for me, and because that's depressing for me.
So I get what you're saying, Nate. For me, the selling point, like you're talking about, control. You can determine the experience. If you want a predefined experience, cool. Here's the new user distro. However, if that new user distro is giving you insert new user distro command here, and that's their way of documentation, you're not exactly catering to the new user who is probably actually transferring from Windows or Mac.
Right.
Like again, talk to the audience. And that's really what I'm saying. Like, I'm not talking about solely documentation or any of that. I'm just like, talk in terms they're going to understand. Equivalencies. So audience, that's what I'm talking about. So like, I get what you're saying though. So like when you said talk to makers, I totally get what you're saying, because they're going to be more interested in getting down and dirty. And like, that is, then you're going to have the crowd that doesn't care.
Right.
And the OS is just tools to launch stuff to insert browser here, basically. Yep. Most of them don't even know what the browser is. Most of them are like, what's the thing that give me? I want the internet. Like that's how do I get to the Googles?
How do I get to the Googles?
Yeah. How do I get to the Facebooks or the Googles or whatever? That's how most people view tech in general, like, or an app store, like. And I think that's the experience,
and I think that's perfectly fine. And I think that those people, they're not technology enthusiasts. So unless you're giving them some sort of an appliance that just does that thing very easily for them, like Steam Deck,
right?
Or I'm sorry, again, please don't throw me off the boat, but the Chromebook is a really good method.
Yes, it's part of the reason why they're used in schools.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and for those that are thirsty to be able to do more with their computers and manipulate them further, they're gonna come to a point where the Chrome OS is not going to be satisfactory anymore. And then those are the people that will explore something else that's similar. And
that'll be the crowd that you generically will start looking at Android apps and getting that installed. Or then if Android apps don't do it for them, then they'll be looking at the full-blown Linux apps that you're able to run on the Chromebooks as well.
And then somebody like a System 76 might be a great choice for, a computer then if they want to go beyond that. Or there's others, there's plenty of others. There's not StarCraft. Star Labs. Star Labs, that's right. Star Labs, and you have Tux computers as well.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's
Tuxedo
computers. Yeah. God, I'm sorry. Tuxedo.
It's somewhere along those lines. Tux. Yeah, it's Linux related, right?
So there are these other options they can explore if they want to, an off the shelf experience, or if they want to try installing something. We have somebody new that just has been doing Linux just since November from Jamaica. They've been joining Linux Saloon lately, and they're just there learning and absorbing, and they're excited, and so it's cool, And I love it when they have questions, and when they and because they're passionate about learning, and those are the people. That's the new user. MX Linux I think is great, but they want to try Antix again because that's what seems to appeal to them, not the fluffy ones, not the fluffy distributions. They want to have something a little bit more gritty. Not to say MX is gritty, but Antix is definitely a little bit gritty. But and I like it. I appreciate that. So the new user doesn't exist. I don't think. They're an ambiguous unobtainium that you will never find. But you can find. I
wouldn't say that they don't exist, but their level, their interests, like what they want out of that experience fluctuates from person to person. So you can't pinpoint this is the ideal, not the ideal.
Yeah,
the standard
you have to,
new user.
You have to find you have to find the audience you're talking to, and Linux. Unfortunately, we regurgitate usually back into the forum mentality of things, and that's kind of where that's the bubble that we stick in.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, so I think catering to whatever audience you're looking to, regardless of if you're distribution or whatever, is the best way to grow anything. Is find what find your voice for the market you're looking for, and cater to that. I'm not saying throw the baby out with the bathwater because I'm the.
You can get in some legal trouble for that. Yeah.
I'm the GUI guy out of the group, and I usually. That's how I view things. I tend to be more of the crossover type of person where I'm using everything all the time. So I tend to see the appliance mentality, and I look at Linux and I'm like, well, why connect the dots here? You don't have to be super technical to use it, but there is a degree of you have to have interest in it to use it right now, at least the way it's currently structured. But this group doesn't talk to this group, and this group doesn't talk to that group because this group's speaking gibberish by sudo apt install all the things over here, and this group's just where's the app store? And that's that so one does not talk to the other. The function to do it is the same. So I just wish that we could kind of sometimes talk a little bit better to one another in that mentality, because it's just you hear about we want to grow Linux, but you got to kind of be a little more welcoming on both sides of the end of that spectrum, and find your audience that you're talking to.
I think Valve has done the most to grow Linux more than any other industry out there. They've done the most.
Definitely.
And Nate, you're using Arch, by the way.
No, I'm using something like Arch Heritage, but not Arch. Now it's time to toss in your 2 cents on today's topics. Hit that discourse form, drop us a line under the video, or on the contact form by visiting tuxdigital.com/contact. I like that we don't say www anymore. Remember we used to say that all the time?
Oh, yes, all the time. Not so much.
Back in the AOL days.
Yeah, that was good. That was good times. Go to www.tuxdigital.com/contact. You don't have to do that.
But we know you're retro, but can you not be that retro?
Well, I think this would be cool if Wendy put in the sound of the modem dial-up. That really the
Oh, I can totally do that. Yes. Yeah, exactly. My kids Wendy, don't understand the pain of that.
You have to do it only on the time Nate does the outro.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Because Nate, you should be the one to do the www dot.
http://
Oh wow.
www. Don't you mean S? No. Just before S. It'll deliver it anyway.
You hope.
So, if you'd like to hang out with us on our preferred social media, see the links at the bottom of the show description. Find other great shows like Fit and Fuel, Destination Linux, and Linux Sloon, and more at tuxdigital.com. Show off your love for your favorite podcasts and shows by visiting the Tux Digital merch store. Grab yourself some awesome swag like the gamer-centric I Paused My Game to Be Here shirt, or join hashtag Team Wendy with some sinister Wendy swag. As always, we thank you for joining us. You're so mean. We'll be back next time with another awesome sode of Linux Out Loud. Until then, keep the banter friendly, the conversation somewhat on topic, and have fun doing it.